Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, the Packers aren't the only ones with a little bit of drama. The Lions have got Alex Anzalone holding out. Certainly not as impactful as Elton, Jenkins, and Jair Alexander necessarily, but, such is the nature of the business. 49ers signed Brock Purdy to a 5-year, $265 million contract extension. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. Steelers still don't have a quarterback. Just waiting by the phone. Has anybody seen or heard from him? Is he okay? Should we check in on the guy, or is he doing all right, you think? Never know. You never know with that crazy guy. I want to go through some of the stuff that we heard from the assistant coaches. Unfortunately, apparently, the Packers media team didn't feel the need to put it on their social media or anything, so I don't have access to the entire thing. So all I have are the little dribs and drabs that were given to us by the Packers media, which, of course, I appreciate them providing us with whatever they did. But I'll do what I can to get you the little tidbits. I'll start with DeMarcus Covington, going the opposite direction as far as saving the best for last, but it just kind of fell that way. It was just sitting in front of my face, and I said, let's just do it. I've got a collection of quotes and whatnot, but I want to start with the actual couple little video clips that we have here. Some of these guys are a little bit lesser known, so it's good to actually hear from them, especially Covington. I'm very excited about him, and it's good to just kind of feel out their personality a little bit. So here he is kind of breaking down the keys to an effective pass rush. I just listened to like a second of it, and the audio sounded like garbage, so I apologize if something doesn't sound great.
One, I think, effective pass rush starts with get off. If we're talking about just the technique of get off, just your get off starts with it, pad level gets with it. Then also just making sure that we do a good job of staying tight to the fight. We talk about three things: the start, the fight zone, and the finish. So being effective in all those three phases. So the start, which is the get off, the fight zone is when you're in your combative zone. All right, winning that, and then the finish is that might be sacking a quarterback, or that might be getting them off the spot.
Absolute blasphemy, by the way, for many Packer fans to hear that the finish might be something other than a sack. Just the idea that could be a thing. Just the worst.
Might be, pressuring them, making them step up or step out of the pocket, whatever the defense allows. So that's how you do it, I would say, as an individual technique, but it's also defense. So with the defense, there comes rush and coverage. So it has to be a good marriage between rush and coverage. So you have to have good coverage, good rush. Or you don't have good coverage, then it's probably going to be, the ball will go out. If you don't have good rush, then the coverage. So I think it has to work together as you go through it.
Speaking of things that a lot of Packer fans don't like, here he is talking about Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah, I think Lucas is a guy that's improving every year. He's a guy that's right now that's coming in every single day, working his butt off in the classroom and on the practice field. He's making daily improvements just like all of our players are, just like all of them are. And for him, I think the sky's the limit, and I'm looking forward to working with him as we continue to go through the spring, go through training camp, and then really see where it goes from there.
And then those are the two videos I could scrape together. Other than that, quite a few quotes from him. Talking about coaching, he says, I think when you think about coaching, coaching is teaching. And when you're looking at it like that, you can teach and you can get the guys to buy into what you're saying and then understand and be able to express those things, not only what you know, because it's really not about what I know, it's what they know and what you can get them to understand and go out there and perform. So I look at it as just being able to teach, which is important. I mean, again, these are all, in a sense, they're all words, it's all whatever, but as I said before when Halfley got in here last year, you get what you emphasize. If you were to ask Joe Barry or Dom Capers or anybody else, do you agree with this? They'll say yes, of course they agree with it. But your ability to actually do it and emphasize it and everything else, as opposed to just kind of running through the motions, which, you would think that there's no such thing as running through the motions and there's all good coaches, it's the best of the best. And then you look at the story that we're hearing about Caleb Williams, where basically he just watched tape on his own. Nobody really helped him. I'm sure they went through film sessions together. But then after that, it was just sort of like an expectation. You just go watch film, and he's like, well, I I don't know what to do necessarily, but okay, I'll just go watch it. There has to be some level of these are my expectations for what you need to be able to do, and I need to be able to make sure you can get there. And the thing I've always loved about Hafley, number one, is he emphasizes the right things, and so you get what you emphasize, right? Takeaways and all that kind of stuff. We saw that. But then also, and I've said it 1,000 times, his ability to teach is really impressive. To break it down into simple ways that people can understand. We've seen that translate to the players even before he got to Green Bay. He was very well known for that. I think we saw it translate in Green Bay as guys really started to improve. And like I said, even just his ability to say things and have me go, oh, that makes a heck of... Like, we all probably watched the same clips, but there's some clips of him doing like a clinic on YouTube, and I watched it, and this is coming from someone who hates that stuff. I'm watching stuff and my eyes glaze over, teaching me about cover 3, and it's like, okay, look, I'm going to let you guys play, and we'll see how it goes. When Hafley talks, it's like, oh, yeah, it's interesting, it's engaged, you understand the how and the why, and so I've always liked that, and I like that, again, theoretically, I don't know if this is just words or not, but I like the fact that he seems to be going out and finding people that have a similar belief in the importance of teaching. And you would hope that with Hafley putting an emphasis on that, we need to make sure that I find a guy that's not only just brilliant. Like you said, it's not about what I know. It's about what I can get them to know. There's a lot of brilliant, brilliant people out there that can draw up plays and do all kinds of stuff. I would bet, Joe Barry and Dom Capers and Dom especially, beyond brilliant. Mike Pettin, frickin' brilliant. But just because you can call the right play or draw up a play doesn't mean the guys on the field know exactly what the heck you expect from them. That's the biggest thing. And you would almost, I'm speaking out of turn here a little bit, but you would almost rather have a guy that's calling the wrong plays, but you got a bunch of guys on the field that know what they're doing, where they're supposed to be, what their assignments are, and all that stuff. Let these talented guys go out and execute at a high level and cover your mistakes. Because otherwise, you can call the right play every single time, and you got guys just standing there going, hesitating because they don't understand, they're not communicating. I mean, man, those years under Joe Barry in particular, I've never seen such dysfunction. And again, I don't know if he's calling the right plays, wrong plays, or anything like that, but what I do know is that the guys had no idea what they were doing. And they were constantly screaming at each other. The ones that did understand were really getting frustrated with the guys that didn't. And, on some level, yeah, it's on the player to get up to speed, but, the proof is in the pudding. If you got one guy that's in here that's a coach, right? Coach is your main title, not play caller. Although for some people that maybe gets flipped around, but you are a coach. That is what you are, and that is what you do. And I think I even said this under Joe Barry, where I said, I don't know definitively whether Joe Barry is a bad coach, coordinator, whatever, with a bad staff, or if our team is a bunch of idiots. But it's definitely one of those two things, because these guys just don't know anything. And that's what I appreciate about Hafley. We talk about, the scheme and all the pressures and the playing man and press man and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, Hafley's smart enough, as we saw, to adapt his scheme. He's smart enough to adapt everything that he does. If he needs to, right? He's got his bread and butter, which would be great if we can kind of like get in the pocket there a little bit. But he's smart enough to know how to adapt his scheme. If we got to play more zone, move from, middle field close to too high shell or whatever. What matters is when he makes a pivot and says, here's how I think with the guys that we have and the opponents we're up against, this is the best way to do it. What matters is you can get your knowledge of what it is we need to do into these players so that they understand it so fundamentally that they can just go out there and play. And we saw them do that last year. So, we know scheme matters because certain schemes win the day, right? That's why schemes evolve. If it didn't matter, you could just keep doing the same thing all the time. They evolve because the scheme that somebody's running is beating the crap out of everybody, and then we got to find a new defensive scheme to go up, and then everybody needs to do that until offenses figure that out. So scheme does matter. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. But it is secondary to your ability to get guys to play whatever scheme you're doing at a high level. So, again, running back through that, he says, when I think about coaching, coaching is teaching. If you can teach, you can get guys to buy into what you're saying and to understand and be able to express those things, not only just what you know. seems to be elaborating on that. He says, that's how I do it. If you're able to teach effectively, you should be able to go down the line and teach anything and apply principles to it. That goes back to exactly what I was just saying. It doesn't really matter what the thing is. That's up to the coaches to figure out. What is the thing that we need to teach? What is the thing that we need to emphasize? We need a coaching staff that can kind of figure that out. They work on that in the offseason. Where is the NFL headed? What do we have on our team? How do we make all these tweaks? Whatever. That's great. Now that the players show up, now is the part where we get them to understand it. But that's the most important thing. Just as he said, if you're able to teach effectively, you should be able to go down the line and teach anything and apply those principles to it. And maybe that's one of the things we've kind of been missing is really good teachers. And, if you don't have it, go find people that do. And I think maybe that's kind of the gap between your offensive and defensive coordinators and the position coaches. Those guys need to be incredible. I mean, Hafley is a great teacher, for sure. And that's awesome. And he should be. But you can understand how maybe as a defensive coordinator, you get somebody that's a wizard, and then they go out there and do all their wizardry. And what you really need are guys that can understand it as your position coaches and whatnot. They know what the vision is. Now you need to teach it. And so as important as it is for Hafley to be a teacher, it's way more important for guys like Covington to be very good teachers. You got to be intelligent to know it, and he's a former defensive coordinator, so that's not a problem. He goes on to say, because principles never really, they don't change. Not really, they don't change. So that's how I look at it, and then obviously you put in the factor of getting the players to buy into you. And that's always a big thing every year it's one of the things with coaches coming back. That first year, they're always fired up. If you don't have a big first year, it's difficult to get that continued buy-in, and that is an important part of it. If they don't believe in it, it's hard to get them to go out there and execute it at a high level, even if they kind of understand it, because they're not just flying around believing that I'm going to go make a play right now. What they're believing is I'm going to be made to look like a fool out there. If I fire downhill and, go try to tackle air, everyone's going to call me an idiot. And so that was one of the things that Hafley taught like in his clinic was essentially, I know this doesn't necessarily make sense, but trust me. When you're doing your press man technique, if they release to the inside, there's only these 4 things they could be doing, and here's how you're going to play it. And in your mind, you might be thinking, how is it only just trust me? Because I don't need you thinking about the whole route tree throughout the entire route. I need muscle memory. I'm going to play my technique the same way off the line. Okay, boom, you went to the outside. Now I know I got to react this way. I got to flip my hips. I got to run. I got to get my, all that physical fighting down the field. But I also got to remember that there's one of 2 things that are going to be happening. If he does this, I do this. If he does this, I do this. It's like fighting. You train to fight. It's a lot of muscle memory. You throw that at me, I'm going to block it, and then I'm going to return it to you. You throw this, I block that in this fashion. You throw that, I block it like this. As I'm blocking, I got my hook loaded up, I'm going to fire it. You don't really need to be thinking of all the different scenarios of like, well, what if they like ran around and did some crazy stuff? Like I need to be prepared for everything. No, you don't. You need to have your body prepared for these 2 things. And so, again, that's where the buy-in part comes in. Trust me. And then when they do it, because it's scary to go out and just be like, just trust me. Only focus on these things. Trust me, this is what they're going to do. I'm telling you what they're going to do. And then you trust and you see it working. That's when you get the buy-in. Says a little later, I don't see the game as just a defensive line coach. You're talking to a guy who played offense in college, a guy who coached multiple positions. So I don't see the game just as a defensive line coach. I see it from a coordinator's perspective too, so that helped me. That experience doing it and calling it and getting the real game experience and game-like experience. And I think that's important. Well, the 2 things. Being a former player can help with the coaching side of it. Being a former coordinator, I think, can help with the comprehension side of it. So when Hafley says something, I'm understanding it at a deep level, at a coordinator level, not just, okay, give me my defensive line piece. What do you want? No, I understand the whole picture and the whole piece, and that's going to help me go talk to the D-line boys. And then as a former player, I know how to speak to you. He says, I would say our personnel guys have done a great job drafting talented players, which provides great competition, which sharpens each other. So when you, as a defensive line coach, and you're looking at players and where to go, I mean, sign me up. anybody would sign up for this job, not only just being one of 32 to be a defensive line coach in the NFL, but when you look at the talent we have across the board at each position, sign us up for it. Talking a little bit about, the fundamentals of it or whatever, he says when you look at receiver and D-line, there's a good amount of hand combat, and it's the same. Footwork, hand combat, it's not much difference. Obviously, the size and speed and all that stuff is different, but combatives are combatives. The way you use your hands and footwork are the way that you use your hands and footwork. Now, he was a former receiver, so I think he's referring to sort of how that all translates. And then the final thing, which I thought was pretty wild, he says, I don't think I've ever coached a first-round draft pick. We have first-round draft picks, and we do a great job drafting here. You're talking to a guy who can develop players and players who have already established themselves. You've got Clark, you've got Gary, you've got Van Ness, you've got Wyatt. You've got all these guys. Our personnel guys have done a great job of drafting great, talented players. What he means is they've done a great job of feeding me my guys. Everybody gets first-round players. It's a question of where they're allocated. You just hit the freaking jackpot when you got the Packers defensive line job, because that's where we have drafted in the first round for a decade. It's just defensive linemen. And what we need from you, Mr. Covington, is to make them look like first-round picks, which would be great. Especially looking at Wyatt and Van Ness. Kenny, love Kenny. He's getting older. If it doesn't turn a corner, it is what it is. If it does, beautiful. Rashawn, I'd love to see him at peak form, but I know he's a good football player, and I know he has a pretty high floor, in my opinion. If we can get Wyatt and Van Ness playing at a higher level, at a even late first-round pick, like call it a second-round pick level, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to be excited. And I already like Wyatt, but I think it's a little understated. I think, like a lot of guys, we draft guys in the first round and then we don't give them a ton of snaps. It's a heavy rotation. He's impactful, but, it doesn't always translate to sacks, so people get annoyed, especially when you're not getting a ton of snaps. Even if the percentage is high, if you don't get a lot of snaps, the overall number, which is all anybody looks at, is low. It's a whole thing. All right, let's take a break. Covington should have been probably about the biggest one, so the other one should go a little faster, I would think. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. But we'll take a break and we'll be right back. All right, so moving on to Sean Mannion here. Again, I've only got the one clip here, so we'll play this one first, and then we'll get into some of the additional comments and whatnot.
Sure. I mean, a lot of it, I think, is, it's the same staff, it's the same system. Now I'm stepping into a role that Tom had, so I want to make it familiar to Jordan, but can I sprinkle in some things from my own experience to maybe just, change things up here and there, try to stimulate maybe a couple things with his development. But like I said, we want it to be familiar for Jordan, and really, just getting feedback from Matt, Steno, everybody who's in the QB room in terms of how we can best support Jordan, because ultimately that's what's most important.
What are the things from your own experience that you're bringing into this, the things that you kind of learned firsthand as a player and an upcoming coach?
Yeah, I think it's ownership of our progressions and timing and reading with our feet, and then just the fundamentals of the position. So to me, it really starts with footwork, and that's something that all quarterbacks need to focus on. But I know really when I first was exposed to it was with Matt in LA in 2017, and it was really a kind of foundational moment in my playing career. I got so much better from understanding how the footwork helps your accuracy, it helps your decision making, helps the timing of the play. So that's really kind of the starting point of what really with any quarterback, but Jordan in particular, we really just always want to have that point of emphasis at the forefront of our mind.
So pretty cool. Another guy that I am excited about, Sean Mannion. I think Vikings fans got me the most excited about him, hearing that he was kind of like a pretty poorly kept secret as far as everybody knew he was going to be coming into it. And I was actually just listening to... Of course, I didn't save it because I'm stupid. Ha! I did like it, though. Dan Orlovsky. So Orlovsky was very similar to Mannion. I think even might have been under Mannion's, Orlovsky's coaching. So it's a very similar tree. So just my understanding of this real quick. When Sean McVay got the job out in LA, and this is part of what Dan Orlovsky's talking about in this video, he was called, so remember, Orlovsky was a backup quarterback. He was a second string, I think, quarterback, probably spent some time third string in his career, I don't know. But he was a second string quarterback for the Detroit Lions, And I think for a lot of these guys, especially as a backup, you kind of are trained in being a coach because your job is, you got to be ready in case duty calls, but also we need you to help get our guy ready. And so when Sean McVay got the job in LA, he called Dan Orlovsky and said, look, man, are you planning on retiring, et cetera, et cetera? What we'd like to do is bring you in as our third string quarterback, and your job is to teach Jared Goff how to watch film. And that's it. Because even though he's maybe not as skilled as Goff or some of these other guys, he is much more intelligent and much more knowledgeable intelligent isn't right, but knowledgeable in these, in how to prepare, how to do all these things, footwork, etc. Mannion is in that line somewhere. I don't know if he was one of the backup quarterbacks. Maybe he was ahead of Orlovsky or whatever, if Orlovsky was quarterback 3. It doesn't matter. But remember, Matt LaFleur was in that. And so Matt LaFleur, Dan Orlovsky, all these guys, Matt LaFleur's a quarterback guy. He's worked with quarterbacks. He goes with McVay. He's the offensive coordinator, but he's still a quarterback guy. And we've heard him talk 1,000 times about the fundamentals, about footwork and all that with Jordan Love. You're hearing that from Mannion, who got it from LaFleur and from Orlovsky and from that whole school of thought there. And so you have a level of continuity where Sean Mannion can come in and already understands in full how Matt LaFleur operates, how important footwork is, and similar to what McVay said to Orlovsky, come in, teach this guy how to do film. I'm sure it's going to be more comprehensive than this, but he could absolutely look at Sean Mannion and go, look, man, we got to drill footwork. Help me coach him to understand and to do, and Mannion is an expert in this. But one of the things he says in here was actually kind of the context behind this, that this was not a secret. Everybody knew he was going to get into coaching. He says, for me as a player, I always knew this would be the next step. So I was really attacking my playing career with the kind of, in the back of my mind, of soaking up as much knowledge as I could to weaponize it for this new role that I am now in. So pretty excited that we were able to sort of steal this guy. Talking about the sort of transition period, how did you handle it in 2023? He says, I was getting things ready kind of through our summer break as a player, working on an interview presentation, working on learning how to draw on a computer. I had my own film library. I was kind of working on hitting the ground running in this field. So, again, everybody knew it. He knew it. Story behind that, I won't redo it because we've already been over it, but the story's kind of cool where he's kind of just expecting to get his feet wet and do a couple interviews, and Matt LaFleur was essentially like, yo, why don't you just come work for us, bro? Talking about working with Tom Clements, he says, Tom was a great mentor for me to work with last year. Just to be around in the quarterback room was awesome. Such a unique thing for him to have his fingertips on 3 great quarterbacks in one organization, which is very cool. To me, Tom was just a picture of stability, being a stable presence in the QB room, even keeled. I was like, what the heck does that mean? Even keeled at all times. There's a lot of stuff that the quarterback position has to juggle, but he was always a stable presence. And then I think just the focus on the details and the fundamentals, he was a great example of that. It's kind of the perfect environment. I mean, for Sean Mannion, who's already at least presumed to be a very, intelligent guy, kind of gifted in this field, to be able to work under Matt LaFleur, to be able to work with Jordan Love, who obviously has a lot of skill, right? There's really no debate about the talent that he has, right? It's just a matter of how much can we harness it and whatnot. And then to be able to spend a year under Tom Clements, who is one of the more legendary QB coaches. I mean, the opportunity couldn't be much better. It's similar to what I said about Jordan. I mean, you come in here, you got Matt LaFleur, you got Aaron Rodgers. If he's ever going to be successful anywhere, this is it. Kind of revisiting this, but question in regard to why his coaching philosophy aligns with LaFleur's. He says, I think the big thing was just our vision of the quarterback position was in perfect alignment because, like I said, when Matt got there with Coach McVay in 2017, that was really transformative for me in terms of learning how to play the position. As for his assessment of Jordan Love, he says he's a great talent, he's a great person to work with every day, and he has a great habit. So I think really when you combine those 3 things, really the sky is the limit for him. What we're trying to focus on, I think, is the fundamentals and the footwork. And I can hear some of the haters off in the distance talking about, man, what is this, year 5, 6, whatever. We're still talking about footwork. And I think to some degree that could be fair. At the same time, I think maybe it's more of a matter of things kind of got sloppy, especially this past year, probably in relation to the injuries and whatnot. We heard about how he couldn't really do certain things. And I think in those situations, you kind of start to develop some bad habits. We saw him playing at a pretty high level. We know he knows the footwork. I think it's a matter of, let's not panic. Let's make sure we didn't, build in and ingrain the bad habits from last year. Let's get back to the fundamentals. Let's slow down. Let's calm down. And let's really try to work within the system. That's one of the things that kind of freaked me out when Matt LaFleur was talking about it was, getting back to understanding why we're calling certain plays. And if this doesn't work, what are we trying to do over here? It started to feel a little bit, panic is one thing, but almost a little bit like what we had with Aaron Rodgers, where we saw the thing work with the system and it was beautiful. And then Rodgers started kind of getting into his own thing. He wanted to kind of do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, firing the ball down the field on 3rd and 2 all the time. And it's like, what the heck are we doing here? And we started to see that from Jordan, sort of like developing those habits, that gunslinger mentality of, I kind of get what we're trying to do, but screw it. When Jordan was at his best, it was just beautiful because, the second a guy would come out of his break, boom, that ball is right there. And now we're seeing this past year, I'm going back and looking at it, and it's like, this guy's open, and you're firing into triple coverage. What the heck are you doing? So there's sort of this element of just like throwing caution to the wind, screw the scheme, screw everything. I'm just going to go out there and wing it and play some backyard football. And it's like, all right, let's not do that, first of all. But also, let's kind of get back to basics here a little bit, I know no quarterback wants to be a game manager. Nobody's looking forward to that. Rodgers hated it. I think he thought he liked the, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan scheme a little bit more than he did. And when it got here, he realized that the coach was the one that dictated everything, and it was, we're going to call this play, and you're going to do this. And if that doesn't work, you're going to do this. And if that doesn't work, you're going to do this. And Rodgers is like, don't freaking tell me what to do. And it's like, well, that's how the scheme works. I mean, if you don't do it, then nothing works. None of this works. So, I mean, it's scary and it's frustrating because it's like, bro, you are incredible, and you're exactly the guy that Matt LaFleur wants and exactly the guy that Matt LaFleur needs, but please don't start getting crazy. Like, let's rein it in. Let's be that guy again that we all saw you be. But again, I don't think it's necessarily a matter of, we're still teaching it because he's still not getting it, which means he's probably never going to get it. I see it more as things got sloppy last year and we got to get back to basics a little bit. We tried to get into like this more advanced, like I don't need the basics anymore. Now I know what to do. I'm going to sling it around the yard. And it's like, no, basics still matter, bro. So that's going to be, I think, an important thing. Here's a little bit from Ben Sermons, who is our running backs coach.
The guy looks better this year than he did
Talking about Josh Jacobs, sorry.
Last year at this point. I mean, his quickness right now, his cutting ability, going through drills, exploding. I mean, he looks better this year than he did last year at this time. So, but, we're not going to do anything like that. We obviously got to watch him, but, the way that he practices is, the same way that he plays. I mean, he's looking to set the tone every opportunity that he gets and to try to get people to follow and match, that type of mentality. So, it's hard pressed to try to take things away from him, from that standpoint. But we do have to be conscious, because once he's in there, like I said, he's in there even in practice situations to set the tone for everybody else.
He also talked about Marshawn Lloyd, said everything's full go for him, which is kind of expected, as far as he shouldn't have any setbacks, but it's still good to hear because we didn't really get a chance to see him at all last year, so hopefully he is fully back and ready to rock and roll. I am excited to see that guy because, again, from the little bit you see, he's a big guy that has some shiftiness to him. We still got to see if the vision is there. That's, A.J. Dillon was promising with his physical stature, but, the power wasn't really there and the vision wasn't really there, but I don't know that he necessarily knew what he was doing, But there are just a couple moments where you look and go, man, that's a big boy that can really move. As for Luke Butkus, the offensive line coach, it's not a ton. You can tell the obsession is over Elton Jenkins. That wouldn't really be my main focus, but the comment that has spurred 6,000 articles is that there's going to be plenty of time for Elton to learn the position, and so there's no concern about him having some kind of stunted growth by showing up a little late at the center position. And that, like I said, I'm looking for Luke Butkus quotes, and I saw that 70 billion times. The quote is, "No concern whatsoever about Elton Jenkins missing off-season program." He says, "Elton Jenkins and I came in together in 2019. There's always a special place for Elton for me. He's a great man. He's a great teammate. There's no concern whatsoever." Said he's special in that regard and being able to cross-train, do all that stuff. He played center in college at a high level. I thought one of his better games last year was when he played center. There's no concern about that, and he'll fit in just fine. As for Anthony Belton, he says, "For a big man to be able to move like that, it's pretty cool." It's a good enough quote for me. All right, let's take our final break. We've got, I think, 3 more coordinators. I don't know that they said a ton, but we'll get into what they had to say, and we'll be right back. All right, here is Jason Vrabel. I found a 5-minute video, so we'll let this play out, and we'll see how much is left over after the fact. But here you go.
For the passing game in terms of pass catchers.
Yeah, both those guys came on a visit here, and got to know them over basically the 24 hours, eating dinner, and put them on the board, and just getting to know the guys. So first and foremost, we always talk about the person, and I thought we got 2 tremendous guys that are just going to be great fits and assets to our building. We've been taking out, like I said, the football part. The character was there, and on the visit, we could just feel that it was going to be a great fit for the Green Bay receiver way. And we're excited as can be about both of them. Collectively as a staff and the management upstairs, and they did a good job figuring out kind of what we were looking for in a guy and the needs. And I feel like we got both the guys that we wanted.
You guys obviously had some issues with drops last year. How do these guys catch it?
Yeah, they catch the ball great. Matthew, early in his career, I think at Houston, year 1 compared to year 3 at Texas where he finished, has been tremendous growth. And everybody's going to talk about, they just go off of like stat lines of just drops. Well, what I look for is like, what were the drops? Why were the drops? Did you take your eyes off it? Or are you a natural catcher? There's a lot of reasons why that could occur. But, when they came on visits, when I was with Savion, we sat down and watched about 6 of them. And just through the process, I just asked, why did you drop these? Well, 3 of them I rushed my head and eyes. Okay, the other 3 were just tracking the ball. So there's things that everybody has to work on, throughout the process. But like I say to guys all the time, it's only a weakness if you don't work at it to make it a strength. But if you put in the work, you can change all the things that you need to get better at. And I think, like I said, we got the guys first, and I'm really excited about them and just as being workers, and like I said, fitting our way, man, representing the G.
You brought quite a few rookie receivers into your system over the last few years. What's the toughest part of that adjustment to this level at that position?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is obviously the playbook, right? I mean, majority of college teams probably are maybe a third of the playbook, maybe even a fourth. They're more about going fast all the time. Some of the receivers only stay on one side of the field. So there's just an adjustment with that. And then the next biggest thing is actually the fundamentals. A lot of these guys just make up for maybe fundamentals at times, just their athletic traits, which is great. But at the NFL level, that's usually not going to result into, success over time. So you really got to hone in from stance and start that I'm going to work. It's going to take them. It might take a guy 3 months, 6 months to really feel comfortable out there and be elite at a stance and start, not just, be slow off the rock. You could run a 4.39 at the combine, but you're not in that stance on the field. Right, and they're just working releases and just all those fundamentals, and it's a day-by-day grind for them. It's a lot of hours they got to put in, in the building and on their own. And some guys, like I've said before, it takes them 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, before they hit their full stride. And then if they're not there yet, you usually just tag them on plays until they get there with their growth.
You've got a lot of young guys in that room now that are all vying for that second contract. From a business side, how do you manage the egos and make sure everyone kind of has a part of it?
Yeah, period, in a receiver room in any position I've ever been in, I want guys who want the ball. If they're not the game on the line when the ball has to be in the air and they're not mad that it didn't go to them, then we got the wrong guy. I want guys who have trained, believed in themselves, and are competitive greatness to the point where when the game is on the line in front of all of Lambeau and everyone watching, you are that guy, right? That's what Devontae became. He wasn't at year 1 or 2. You work at it, and then you become that. So I tell our guys, I want all of you guys to get your second contract, whether it's here or somewhere, right? And if our whole building is pushing in the same direction, all the guys, I want them to have success in life. I want them to have 10-year careers where they're both financially and, numerically successful. That's what my job is of a coach. So I'm going to push them all the same at every time. And, I've always said it before, you get what you earn. No more, no less, just the laws of compensation of what you're going to get. It usually works out that way in this league.
With Jaden, he was so productive the first half of the season. Then the second half, his numbers at least seemed to dip a little bit. What did you see as kind of the reason for that, and what's it going to take for him to put together a full season like what we saw the first month or two?
Yeah, sometimes stats, aren't always on the player. They could be on us too, as a coaching staff, whether maybe Josh Jacobs just had a 32-carry game. It's not his fault. Or the ball didn't go his way, dictated by the coverage. And you can get him the ball in certain ways, but there's going to be some games that just didn't go that way. There's a couple injuries throughout the time that were nothing like that he had to miss a lot of games, but he was banged up a little bit too, and he's the type of tough guy who's going to play through everything. I remember 2 years ago in Minnesota, he had to leave the game in halftime to go to the emergency room because, whatever, coughing up blood. But he was fighting through it. He said he didn't want to come out and he wanted to play. I just think he's one of those warrior types that is going to do everything for his team and himself to be on the field. And like I said, it's not all on him. He has worked tremendously. He's, I think, in my mind, the strongest, most powerful he said he's ever been in his life. When he came in here a couple years ago, I think he was like 185. Now he's at like 199 of just your body changes if you eat right and live right, and he has. And I think probably the biggest growth too is the way his leadership's been right now. I really want to commend him because he's standing behind Matthew Golden right now, helping him out with every single play. He's going over with Mecole Hardman, who just got here, and he is the one guy right now that I feel all our guys are the brotherhood strong right now, but he is I'm going out of my way because he's a natural leader, and he always has been. I think everybody has always said that from Michigan State, to his high school days. He's a natural leader. He's a driven person who's a winner on and off the field. And I think being that genuine person is going to just, good things are going to happen for him.
So lots of cool little tidbits there. Good to hear about Jaden Reed, kind of guy he is, the kind of leader he is. It's good to hear that he's extremely active in trying to get our new guys up to speed. That was, I didn't play it, but on one of the radio shows you had one of the guys screaming about how we got a bunch of crybabies in Lambeau or whatever. Might be a slight exaggeration. Crazy to hear Jaden Reed is almost 200 pounds, isn't it? I freaking love that. I mean, he's already a talented guy, but to be able to build up your body and kind of, Jair's that way a little bit, where it's like he's a smaller guy, but, like 200 pounds, man. He's built up a little bit. So, look, I'm excited about Jaden Reed. I mean, he's one of the more underrated players, to come in and break records and have solid seasons, surpassing what pretty much anybody else has done coming into Green Bay. And he's kind of the forgotten guy, and it's understandable. Dontavian Wicks has a lot going for him that is exciting. Christian Watson obviously is extremely exciting. Romeo Doubs was the guy for a while in terms of, could he be the true number one or whatever? And then Jaden Reed comes into this, and he's just kind of a guy. And then, with this past year, we kind of saw times when he really got taken away. And so the idea of him being this super elite player we maybe thought was going to happen when the season started and he really popped off kind of went away, and we started looking elsewhere, But I don't want to forget about Jaden Reed, just like you don't want to forget about Tucker Kraft. I mean, I don't want to forget about Luke Musgrave either, but that's a whole different discussion. That's a guy that hasn't yet proven his worth. Tucker and Jaden certainly have, and I think sometimes we can kind of get, it's kind of like that meme, the guy walking with the girl and he peeks back and looks at the other girl, and the lady that he's with is all offended. Should do a meme like that with Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden, or Savion Williams might even be better considering they're similar styles. Or you could do it with Christian Watson and Matthew Golden. But, like I said, I think there's every reason to believe that Jaden Reed is in a lot of ways like Randall Cobb, That year when we had so many injuries that Randall Cobb needed to be that number one guy, it was bad. Like he's not built for. He's phenomenal for what he is, and everybody's this way a little bit. Everybody, football is the ultimate team sport, as everyone always says ad nauseum, but it really is the truth. Nobody's great in a vacuum. It's a matter of, can we make sure that you're in the position to kind of demonstrate that greatness? Sometimes it's easier, like if you're a pass rusher or even a quarterback, you can kind of make some stuff happen on your own. You're in control of your own destiny, but some guys, that's not always the case. And even pass rushers, if you don't have any help, you're getting double teamed. You can still do your job. You can still dominate. A lot of the elite guys, they face that and they can still dominate. But look, I think if we can get to a point where Jaden Reed is the forgotten guy, where so much attention is being paid to the speed on the outside, whether that be Christian or Matthew Golden, when you got guys like Tucker that are really scaring the crap out of people, and then we'll see if it's Dobbs or Wicks or Savion that kind of fill that X role. Could be Golden, I don't know. And then, of course, you got these big, hulking offensive linemen leading the way for what Matt LaFleur undoubtedly wants to be this unstoppable run game. And we talk a lot about how they want to be Philadelphia. I think you can look at a team they play twice a year as somebody that Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst are trying to emulate as well. A team that just absolutely, Detroit was freaking phenomenal. And their success is very obvious. If you have a dominant offensive line that can protect your quarterback and also can just blow open holes for guys to run through, no disrespect to their running backs, but I don't know that they have certainly the number one running back. I don't think is a guy that's going to be able to do anywhere near as much without that offensive line. Some guys can make Aaron Jones can make magic happen. I think the running back we have right now, because of the size and whatnot, they can make magic happen. But we want to get to the point where it is a dominant run game. Like you are just getting, working the body so much that those hands start to drop, and then bang, then we go for the knockout punch. We're coming out here, we can't run. We got a running back running into a freaking wall, and then we're like, let's take a shot. And they're like, okay, well, we're just going to stay back in our freaking too high. So feel free, I guess. I don't know why you would do that. Point is, obviously, hopefully, we are now to the point where we can stop saying, okay, can we build an entire team around Dontavian Wicks? Can we build an entire offense around Tucker Kraft? We've got all the pieces to be able to just dominate in every single facet. And in that environment, I think, is where Jaden Reed can absolutely thrive, to just work underneath. We scare you over the top, we scare you with the run game, and he's that guy right in the middle. You want to crash downhill or you want to drop back, the guys you're forgetting about, Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed. And those are the guys that are going to hurt you. If the run game starts popping off, if we got that consistent deep threat, those are the guys you better watch out for. I don't know if he said it in this clip, but Jason Vrabel talking about, this is as deep as we've been in 4 or 5 years. And it's true. Talent and depth are two different things, but you don't even try to think of a time when the Packers were this deep in the last, I don't know, when did Jordy leave? That's probably what he's referring to, right? We had Jordy and Randall and Devontae. Once that all fell apart, we have not had a group like this since. And then we'll end with Derek Ansley. I think some of the more interesting and exciting things came from him. First of all, Derek Ansley says that he has contact with Jair Alexander every day. Mike Clemens posted, have the Packers had any contact with cornerback Jair Alexander as he sits out team offseason workouts? The quote, every day. I contact him every morning. I send him a positive quote, sometimes scripture. Yes, we have contact every morning, says Packers defensive coordinator Derek Ansley. We wanted to say that Keyshawn Nixon has taken the next step, and I think the sky's the limit for him. Probably just generic coach speak, but it's great to hear. Because a lot of these guys, I shouldn't necessarily just brush it off as not. I don't think they're necessarily going to lie. I think it's true that it's like, okay, we wanted you to work on these things to be able to get to it. It seems like you've got it. Now we've got to put it all together and see if it actually comes to fruition. But, they are very good at the art of evading questions they don't want to answer because it's not a great answer. And then finally, I don't think I'm missing much here, but my favorite quote of the entire thing, Packers defensive pass game, this is Matt Schneidman, Packers defensive pass game coordinator Derek Ansley on cornerback Kalen King, quote, I don't want to speak too soon, knock on wood, but he's looking real good out there. I freaking love that. And again, when you talk about coach speak, you don't usually say things like that when you are doing the whole coach speak routine. You don't usually come out and go, look, I don't really want to jinx it or anything, because you never know, but holy crap. So we'll see. Again, very excited for the OTAs and whatnot. Get an opportunity to get a better look at these guys. So many people I'm excited to see. Kalen King is one of them. Marshawn Lloyd is another one. I feel like the fan base has basically moved on from Marshawn Lloyd, just like they did with Jordan Morgan for the most part. But, yeah, very excited. I'm going to leave it at that. I think we had, like, Sean Duggan was speaking or whatever. I don't super care. Bunch of questions about Isaiah Simmons that I don't really want to listen to anymore. You guys have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.